So, while I'm working on the studio slash office to do more my audio recording in, I thought that I would take a moment to talk about something that kind of was talked about on the comment sections of the last couple of videos, and that is the difference between all of the models and what they are and where they, how they look and what they've traditionally been and what they've traditionally appeared as. Now, almost all the guitars you're going to see today are a mod collection or a mod shop guitar. So these guitars don't necessarily have exactly the appointments that a lot of the other guitars of their time, and especially the appearance that some of them have. Like, for instance, over here we have the Junior, and the Junior is, at its core, it looks like a lot of it, but it's got things like the pearloid pick guard, the intonatable tailpiece, little things like that have been changed on that guitar, and it gives it a little bit of difference. The actual satin amber studio right here, they never came in satin amber. That was a color that was specific to a different model. I think maybe the studio faded or something like that. So there's little appearances, but overall these guitars are what you would think of as, if you looked at it and you saw it up on stage, you'd go, oh, that's what that is. All right. So starting off with the Junior. The juniors and specials share one thing: they're flat. They are just the mahogany body. They don't generally have any kind of cap to them. Are there special editions that do? Yes. I haven't seen any in a while, so I really can't tell you exactly what they are. But if you notice especially, it's more prevalent right here, there's a bigger gap between where the neck and the fretboard and the body meet. So the fretboard and the body in this little gap right here is deeper than most. So because you don't have that maple cap on there to take up some of that room. These guitars are generally lighter, and they were considered more like, the Junior name came around because it was the kind of the lower end student model, kind of what you would think of like a Paul Reed Smith SE stuff is. But these guitars have developed a cult following in their own right, and the Junior has a single pickup, and the Special almost all have double pickups. Now sometimes it's humbuckers, sometimes it's P90s. Most of the time it's P90s when you talk about a Special or a Junior, but there have been editions that did have humbuckers in them. And so because of that, you can't just say, oh, well, this is the way this is, and it's just 100% always that way. Because somewhere out there is the Music Zoo or their equivalent ordering special guitars that have these names on them and don't have the same appointments. And if you like the way the Music Zoo and stuff like that do their special order guitars, that works great. But for today's deal, this is what a normal, an average appearance looking Les Paul Junior or Special would look like. It's like I say, flat top, 12-inch radius fretboard. This particular one has kind of a more 50s inspired neck. It's a little bit thicker, kind of chunkier, but they all have the one thing, and that is they are flat tops. And like I say, they are great guitars. I have never owned a Junior until this one, And I still haven't owned a special, but these guitars are really awesome, and they're great because they're generally less expensive. All the benefits of a Les Paul at a lower price. Now, comparatively speaking, this one is the, like I said, Junior is probably at this point in time about $1,000 or less guitar. Most of them there'll be some of them that are reissues that are more expensive, but overall, these flat top models generally in the $1,700 to $1,100 range. You step up a little bit to the Tribute. This particular one is really indicative of what you would see on all Tributes. They are like satin. Some of them are gloss, but they are generally a little satin to cut down on the amount of work that it takes to make them. They do have the carved top, and you can see, looking here, that gap is not nearly as big because you have the maple cap on it. So this is the first of the models that you generally get the maple cap on. These guitars are fabulous, and generally speaking, they'll come with a 490R, 490T. The Tribute model, there were Tribute models that came before this, but they were built into like the Studio or Standards, Tribute Standards, something like that. They've all had a couple of names, but in somewhere around 2013-ish, they came into their own model. And when they did, these guitars ran right about $1,000, and they're great guitars. Humbuckers don't usually have fancy electronics, though some of them come from the mod shop or places like that do. And of course, they're easy to work on because they're so basic. Generally speaking, they will have just like on the specials and juniors, they will have a silk screened Gibson logo, and this, instead of having any kind of mother of pearl or anything like that. Now, the Tributes are so close to Studios that a lot of people can easily mistake one for the other. Realistically, the Studio isn't much different. Same basic setup, same overall appearance. They generally have the same setup, but they usually have a little bit more when it comes to the pickups and upgrades. Now, the Studio that we've always known came about somewhere in the early 80s, I think. The Tributes came along, easily 20 years later. These guitars, and especially this particular one, which is like I say a mod collection guitar, it is a great playing guitar, equally light, just like the Tribute. They, plain backs, stuff like that. But these guitars have evolved into something new with the modern collection of Gibson Les Pauls. Notice that it has the silk screen. This one's got like a red color over that silk screen on the Gibson logo, but overall these are great guitars, staying in that same $1,000 price range basically. Now, suddenly Gibson just recently came out with the modern Studio, and these guitars upgraded some stuff. They now come with I'm not sure if that's mother of pearl or if that's acrylic Gibson logo. They're no longer just silk screens across the top. So these guitars have gone a little bit higher end. They got a little bit better tuners on them, but the pickups, everything has 4 deal. Now, the most recent version of the Studio, right before this, had the coil splits or coil taps. So you had the coil tap and coil split. This one now has the true bypass and the phase reversal on top of that. So these guitars really did start coming out with the 490R, 498T pickup set. That is basically what is in a custom on a normal day. So these pickups were available at a studio, which was easily anywhere from half to a third the price you would pay even on a used market for a Les Paul custom. These now, and a lot of them had something similar, and that was that they had ebony fretboards when they first were coming out. So they really did have a lot of bang for the buck for people that were looking for a guitar that was really close to being a custom, but they didn't have the money, or they didn't want to take a custom out on a stage with them because the possibility of it getting damaged, people stealing it, things like that. This particular generation now has something different, and that is it has ebony binding around. It has ebony fretboard with black binding. So the fretboard is ebony, but there's actually, and you can't really see it unless you can do it, but you see there is a little binding area that is around the neck. And that's something new for the studios. Now, there have been studio standards in the past that I think had the actual binding on there. And there's been versions of studios all throughout, the last 40 plus years that have had different types of appointments. The studio name has been applied to a couple of different versions of other guitars. And of course, you have places like the Music Zoo, which are going to order guitars that are a little bit different. And those a little bit different frequently have something like this set up as their normal guitar, as a guitar that you can order, that they special order and then make a run of, and Gibson does it. So can you find a studio with binding before now? Absolutely. Is it the normal commonplace? Nah, not really. But these guitars also have the modern neck carve, and we'll see this compared to another model here in just a little bit. But this neck carve makes it a little bit easier to access the higher up frets if you're doing solos, or if you just happen to be playing up there. Not really sure what you'd be playing in that area other than a solo, but they do have that, and it does make it a little bit easier. There was a high performance model that came out years ago, 2016-ish, I think, and the high performance models had a smoother neck carve, and I really, really, really wish Gibson had stuck with that, because that neck carve, this heel carve that was on the high performance models was just butter smooth, no anything, very much like the Access is now, and I really wish they kept that, but whatever. So from the studio, you step up to a classic. Now this one is a mod collection guitar again, so it's got different appointments overall, but it does have all of the same things appearance-wise that you would look at to see a classic versus a modern or anything like that. These guitars, when they came out, they were very, very much, they were called like the classic 1960 or something like that, and they had a lot of really great appointments. Still have the maple cap on the mahogany body. So, but now you step up into having binding. And the classic really kind of was the first step into your more upscale style of binding guitar. I mean, it's a step towards the standard, which we will eventually get to. But these guitars themselves were, at their base, just a bargain version of a standard. And some people actually like them better than standards. There's a cult following for the classic. Some people love them, a lot of people hate them. But they do get the acrylic or mother of pearl Gibson logo. This particular one has upgraded tuners. They are Graphtex, but you would see these with the kidney bean like Rovers, or sometimes you would see them with these tulip ones. And they're I'm trying to remember. I think the classic 1960 is the one that had these tile tips on your tuners, but they were, I think, still Grovers. They were, like I say, there were different versions of this all throughout the different runs of classics, but like I say, this one was a mod shop guitar that came with the Gibson Deluxe with little special style tuners on it. I'm not a fan, so I wound up going with locking Graphtec ratio tuners. Binding on the neck is a universal deal for these. They, like I say, do have the maple cap with the binding. There's no such thing. They don't have like historically correct thin binding or anything like that. There's just they're just bound guitars. Several different versions of pickups came in these. 61R and 61T were a pretty normal version of that. These guitars had several different generations, and the last generation, right before they did it, they did have the coil taps, bypass, and phase reversal on. So all four of these did have that from the factory. So that was something that was specific to this one. This one has 490R and 490R and 490Ts. So very much like what a Tribute, but with the ability to coil split and phase reverse on them. So that's one of the reasons I like these guitars. This particular one, like I say, Mod Shop has the celluloid back plates, or I think these might be Moto back plates. But anyway, overall, these are great guitars, and they're very inexpensive in the used market. A lot of love by some people, a lot of hate by others. Very much a slim taper design neck that was indicative of the changing of it. These guitars were kind of supposed to, the last generation of the classic was described as a hot rodded standard. So it was like a 61 or a 60s era standard that had been modified to be a more modern style guitar. Is that true? I don't think so. I think they just were really good guitars that just happened to be cast into a weird deal. Now, there is a model that is right above this that is on par price-wise with the cheaper standards. This is a deluxe, and the biggest thing you can think about with the deluxes is most of them, almost every single one, have mini humbuckers unless they've been modified to have the standard size humbuckers. Now, that said, I want to point out there were some deluxes in like the early 70s that did have regular humbuckers instead of minis. Could be a shortage in product for the mini humbuckers, could be just somebody decided, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a different guitar today. These guitars all share the same thing, and that is that they are bound maple top with a mahogany body. This particular one has a little bit more flame in it because it is an anniversary model. This was a 30th anniversary model and it came out in like 2000, 2001. I think this one is actually a 2001 if I remember correctly. Yep, it is. But these guitars were an anomaly in the fact that they had such flamey tops and were great. There have been several different colors of these guitars. Classic, deluxes have mostly been gold tops, but they've come in black, they've come in wine red, they've come in sparkle tops. I mean, the deluxe has been recreated like 3 different times, and each time it's something not even vaguely like the last. It's really strange how much they are, but they all come with a, you know, with tuners very similar to this, and they all come with the upgraded Gibson logo. These are great guitars. Mini humbuckers are a love it or hate it deal. A lot of people like them, a lot of people hate them. I'm in love with these. My first Les Paul that I had here in the States was a deluxe. It was a 77 model, and I regret letting it go every single day. But up from this comes another guitar that is a short-lived deal, but kind of it's a unique guitar for the era, and that is the first generation Les Paul Moderns. These guitars have a cult following in some folks and a cult hate from the others. This one is the sparkling burgundy top, and Gibson later on decided to use this on the like 50s and 60s standards. And these guitars are unique because, much like that studio modern, these have that heel carve. So the heel carve on these makes them a little bit easier to play up. They do have the ebony fingerboard. They have the white binding, just like, you know, if you swapped the white binding onto the black of the modern studio, you'd have a really similar guitar. But these do not have the 490R, 498T. They have, I forget what they are, but they are some kind of other version of pickup that does not, that does have the ability to coil tap, and it has bypass and phase reversal. These guitars all had a really, really, really good feel to them. They still make a modern. I have not played one of the other new moderns to tell you they look just the same. They have the same specs, but they all have flame tops. And so some people, flame top might be a more desirable deal. They're more expensive than they used to be, but they're good guitars. I like them. I think that this one is unique in its, because of its generation. I think that it is a great playing guitar, but like I say, a lot of people, it's a love or hate deal. So up from the modern, there actually was a guitar that was a short run that ran for a little while in the early to mid 2000s. Eventually became different versions of the guitar. Like, this is the traditional, and the traditional is very much like a standard. This particular one has a little bit of flame on the top. This is a 2011 model, and these guitars had all the same appointments as a standard, but with the name traditional. And unfortunately, the nameplate was kind of tarnished. This particular one, I've got a little different switch washer on it, but overall, these guitars were great. This one has the 57 Classic and 57 Classic Plus, and they are just great guitars. This particular one I've had since new, and it is aging quite well. Not a lot of damage, not a lot of checking or anything, but the white that it used to be is starting to cream over, and it is turning into a great player. The guitar itself has aged amazingly. The playability of it has not changed a single bit, they all came with these kind of tuners, and then later on they changed them to be something different. Now they went through several generations of this. 2000, somewhere along the way, they became like the traditional Pro models. And the traditional Pro is different than the traditional, because the traditional Pros frequently have different neck carve, compound radius fretboards, which is something that the modern also has, is a compound radius fretboard. So it is not, it's like from a 10 to 16 or something like that. They flatten out as they come up, so you have a little bit easier time playing in the cowboy chord area and a little easier time soloing up in the top registers. These guitars don't have anything like that. They are very much like a standard. The traditionals that are not traditional Pro models are outstanding guitars. The Pro is a good guitar, but it's just not the same, and the actual traditional like this one, it just plays better. It has a better feel. I mean, and it's all speculation, because everybody has their own feeling about how these guitars play and feel and stuff like that. They do have a lot of really great appointments to them. They are super comfortable again, and depending on which one you get, you can sometimes find really flamey models like this one. And this is one of those guitars that some of them don't hold a lot of value in the used market, but they are very much on par with the standard of any era. The build quality is good, and the durability. This one was made literally in the weeks before the Rosewood, right before the Rosewood raid on the Gibson factory in Nashville. So it has a distinction of being a unique guitar because of that. Now, to tell you and show you, so look closely at all the appointments and everything on this one, and then I'm going to show you something that is indicative of most standards. Now this next one is the Adam Jones standard, and it has an ebony fretboard, and it has a couple of differences, like the volute on the back of the headstock. But this guitar in general tells you that it's a standard with most of its appointments. And this particular one uses the Schaller style tune pegs, and like I say, they are super duper easy to use. I actually like these better than like the kidney bean ones. I think these are bigger and a little bit easier to turn. This guitar is a player's guitar. It does a lot of everything, and the 50s and 60s standards that I've had, they felt very much like this guitar. The binding is very similar. Everything about this guitar, even though it's supposed to be like a clone of a 1979, it really is just a standard guitar. And standards have the name standard because they are the standard for what they are. And to prove that, look at this. So this is a clone of a 1979, right? The appointments are supposed to be very similar to a 1979. The guitar itself has a look, the binding and the way it's cut, the heel carve, there's no heel carve or anything. So it's just what we think of as a standard. Now, like I say, the volute is specific to this guitar because it's a 79, which is something that the volute was something that they were doing in the 70s. Next is an R8. And as you can see, it's very much the same. This is a clone of a 58 that's made by the Gibson Custom Shop. It does have some different, the side marker dots are a little different because they have the tortoise shell, because that's specific to early 50s models. These guitars are very close replicas apparently to what the actual 57, 58, 54, all those different generations, all those different models of guitars all had something similar. But you notice the headstock is basically the same. Of course, in the 50s, they were not doing the volute. This one has been modified. This is a mod shop guitar, so it does have modern rovers that have been aged to make it look like they've been on for a while. The pickups are Birchbucker 2 pickups, so they are very much indicative of pickups that are clones of those pickups from that generation. But also the appointments with the knobs and everything is very much like the R8, what 1958 model is. So the R8 really is a great feeling guitar, and like I say, they used aniline dies on the back, which I'm told is a very messy process, but it makes for a great looking guitar, especially in the thin binding and the cutaway, because that shows you that maple cap with everything else. So this is a custom shop guitar though. So now we've got all the way from a base model junior up to an R8. And the R8 is actually considered a step up from the next guitar, but because it is not, the next one is just a regular custom. And the custom itself has been around since the 50s. These guitars are the ones with the split diamond headstock, and they are great guitars. This particular one is sporting 57 classics in it. It is 100% a great guitar, and if you are looking for a comfortable guitar to play anytime, these guitars do make that case. They have different inlays. They're the the rectangle / square models. These are the ebony fretboards, white binding. You can find these in different colors. We actually have two of these. We have this one, which is a 2021, and we have a 2007 model that is in cherry sunburst. And when we took the electronics apart, they are so close to each other that you would not be able to tell them apart unless you knew what you were looking at. If you knew what everything was. If you had a black 2007 and you had a black 2021, they would not be able to be distinguished apart unless you knew to look for the date codes on the pots. These guitars have had so many different iterations that it's impossible. Even the mod shop has been making guitars that have coil splits and everything, but historically the R8s and the customs do not have fancy electronics. They take out all the other stuff in favor of having a basic design that gives you the sound that is indicative of what Gibson Les Pauls should sound like. 57 classics in this guitar sound very similar to the 57 classics in the traditional. So again, much like the modern studio, these guitars are very similar in what the wiring in there in the 2011 is almost identical to this wiring. There are upgrades on the custom shop stuff. The wiring is a little bit different. The actual wires are a little bit different. The caps are a little bit different, but overall the wiring and everything is the same. When you get into the 490R, 490Ts that are in the studios, you get a lot of the same stuff that's in one of these from the factory. Like I say, this is a mod shop guitar, so it's got a little bit different. It's got chrome instead of gold. The pickups are uncovered 57 classics versus covered 57 classics. Also in the other guitar, the 490R, 490T are generally covered on the custom, but they did make some silver, some silver or chrome appointed customs, and good guitars. They're Like I said, I just wanted this one because it was something that I saw with the 57 Classics in it, and I knew I liked them in my traditional, and I couldn't really say no. I like mod shop guitars. I'm kind of a snob. This guitar though is super comfortable to play. There's a lot to be said about these guitars. They generally have a different. There's different reissues of them too. A lot of the Black Beauties have different neck carves. A lot of them have different pickups. Some of them have the staple humbuckers. They're customs. Sometimes only have one pickup. There's been a couple of them that were ordered with different setups even from that. And like I say, you can find all kinds of different ones, but if you're looking for a custom shop guitar that is the standard for which custom shops should be measured, Custom pretty much does that. And it's a little less expensive than some of the reissues. Well, it's a lot less expensive than a lot of the reissues. So again, there it is. There's the top of the range, the Custom. It is, like I say, it is the one by which so many people measure. Though a lot of guys, Slash for instance, favor the standards because of what they are. My personal favorites out of this group, there's no losers. They're all great. I'm new to the junior and special game. I found that I really liked it. I don't like it more than I like the R8, and I don't like it more than I do the standard or traditional. But I do like it. The Custom, I do think that the Custom is more money because of its appearances, and I'm not all that much on appearances. I like pretty guitars, but I do think that if you get to a point where you're buying like a standard reissue, if you got enough money for a Custom and you like the way the standard is, go find you a used standard. So again, there it is. Everything from the bottom to the top. Hope y'all learned something. Till next time.